This is impossible!
Hardly. Though I realize none of this makes sense from your point of view. If I were a nice guy, I would explain why you must be destroyed. But I am not a nice guy.
So, it's finally here. The final chapter of the Bad Ben timeline. This series is a what if of what I believe could have possibly happened in order for this version of Ben to have gone bad. Last time I analyzed about the Bad Ben timeline, we saw just how this version of Ben's timeline diverged during the events of Absolute Power. Without the guidance of his grandpa Max, and Gwen being off in space, studying and mastering her Enidite abilities, there was no one to prevent Ben from doing what had to be done and taking Kevin's life. Cervantes' initial goal for Ben returns, seeing how dangerous he's been recently. The cerebral crustacean hybrid then kicked Ben out of the rooters, causing him to return to Earth and reside in his grandpa's motorhome. Now we will discover just how Ben got recruited into Vilgax's army and what remains of the rooters. Sometime after killing Kevin, Ben now finds himself alone while on the run from the Plumbers. The rooters have been disbanded, and as their future intentions have been revealed and leaked by Ben after he was kicked out of the Special Ops Group. Now stationed in the No Void, Cervantes began to plan his revenge on Ben Tennyson. While back on Earth, Ben was dealing with his own problems. It had been a year since he last heard from his old team, and the now 16-year-old was on his own, once again roaming the streets of Undertown. He'd been through many adventures since then, from fighting Luma Redwind of the Tetramans, after being challenged after she found out he was responsible for killing her would-be husband, who he was shocked to find out was Kevin, to meeting an old classmate of his, Billy Billions, who he gladly sent back to Dimension 12. But in the middle of all that, Ben found himself being hunted by a new plumber on the scene, Rick Blanco. The two would fight on numerous occasions before they found themselves being attacked by Kyra the Huntsman during one of their battles. Letting his ego get the best of him, Ben would look down upon Kyra and his pet, stating the knockoff Omnitrix the Huntsman's dog was wearing wouldn't be enough compared to his own. But he was proven wrong by the combined efforts of the Huntsman and his companion, who captured Ben, causing Rook to go after them. After all, capturing Ben Tennyson was his mission, and he couldn't let a lowlife like Kyber get away either. Although, since there were two he was after, this made the situation even harder. They could possibly team up to fight him, so in order to even the playing field, he called in a little help from Gwen Tennyson. Ben would be surprised to see his cousin after all this time. While helping him out of his bonds, she explained to him that she was in the middle of her training, but was in the neighborhood since she had to return to Earth because their Enidite cousin Sunny had been stirring up trouble on the planet yet again. Gwen and Verdona was sent to return Sunny back to Enidine, and once their cousin was captured, she stayed behind as she heard what Ben had been up to. She didn't want to believe it, but seeing it in front of her eyes, Gwen was disappointed in what her cousin had become, with Ben telling her that she wouldn't understand. The three of them would team up against Kyber, but knowing they wouldn't just let him go free, while Kyber's ship was crashing, he used that as a way to escape, leaving Gwen and Rook to fend for themselves. After this, Gwen would stay on Earth and help Rook bring Ben into custody. In this timeline, because Ben is sort of the antagonist, Gwen becomes Rook's partner and the two would go through most of the adventures the Prime Ben and Rook did in the original timeline. from stopping Troubler's rampages to preventing the incursions from taking over several worlds. Ben would also take the role of Albedo in certain situations, teaming up with Kyber of all beings to kidnap Agnes in order to use Agnes' brain to unlock the full potential of the Omnitrix and the Nematrix, which leads Ben to unlocking his atomics transformation. But when he's faced with the opportunity to finally take Gwen out, something inside him stops, and he ends up escaping. Ben's next big adventure would be when he was met by an alternate version of himself known as Eon. The two fought in a devastating battle, but Eon would eventually persuade Ben to his side and recruit him, along with other alternate versions of himself with the same mindset and beliefs, to kill a version of Ben in the Omniverse who didn't have an Omnitrix and rule that timeline. Of course, we know how this goes. The events of this stays the same. This Ben and all the others, except for one, were all erased from existence by Vilgax, who used the Chronosapient time bomb. And in the end, Bad Ben, along with the other counterparts, were returned and was sent back to his own timeline by his no-watch counterpart as Clockwork, who had been using Ben Prime's Omnitrix. The Rooters would eventually return, with Cervantes leading the charge, with the Amalgam Kids yet again, having set in motion his plans to destroy the coming storm that is the Omnitrix ruler, Ben Tennyson. As much thin ice as Ben was on, Gwen and Rook couldn't allow Cervantes to kill Ben, and needed to protect him at all costs. The events of this arc pretty much stay the same, with some differences, of course, the number one thing being that Kevin isn't here. So in this timeline, Ben, Rook, and Gwen team up with the help of Argent to find Cervantes and the Amalgam Kids, leading to Ben almost being destroyed by the non-Balearic chamber, but was saved when Gwen used a spell to break Cervantes' control over the Amalgam Kids, allowing them to decide what they want to do for themselves. They hate Ben for killing Kevin, but they hate Cervantes even more for what he did to them over the years with his experiments and lies, causing them to turn on Cervantes and release Ben. Ben would defeat Cervantes and beat him almost to the point of death before being stopped by Gwen, which leads to Cervantes being able to escape. The Magistrata would show up, stripping the Rooters of their opponent titles, and as punishment leave them in the Null Void. As the Plumbers were departing, due to his acts today and few various other times where he's helped the good guys, Ben is given the opportunity to serve time behind bars, be rehabilitated, and join the Plumbers once more. Ben declines the offer, deciding to stay in the Null Void and go after Cervantes. This fight made Ben think back on everything he's done up to this point in his life. He was almost completely destroyed on a subatomic level, and the two who he continuously tried to defeat came to his aid. He decided that maybe he was too far gone to become that hero he once was, but knew he had to be punished for all the pain he caused. So he sentenced himself in the Null Void, maybe one day having escaped with a new mindset, although he wasn't betting on it. Gwen states that it's always good to see them, even when he's trying to kill them, but it's fun to be on the same team once again. Calling his cousin a dweeb, they depart with a hug. Ben and Rook sharing a fist bump, and Audrey goes in for a hug, but Ben pushes him away before leaving, while the Plumbers exit through the portal. As he watches the portal close, Ben turns, looking over at the vast and endless space that is the Null Void, beginning his search for Cervantes, as a way bat roars in the distance. So there you have it, my version of the Bad Ben timeline. I honestly didn't mean to take this long to make the final part of this. I think I kept holding it off because I just got distracted with creating every other video I had made since then, but yeah. Also, I wanted to make sure I created a scenario that I found interesting and made sense. Making this video reminded me of the reason I started this channel, which is to have fun and share my thoughts on topics in the Ben 10 universe and the franchise itself. I'm happy to say that once I started writing this final part, I couldn't stop, and the ideas just kept flowing, which was half the fun of it. Again, there's no history to Bad Ben, and I wanted to find a character who I'd have fun with, and although I was originally gonna do it with Ben 23, I chose this Ben because there's a lot to fill in and discover with him. Tell me what you think your version of Bad Ben's story would end up. Thanks for watching, have a nice rest of your week, and I'll see you when I see you.